So a little while ago, iiyama got in touch with us to take a look at one of their new 1080p gaming monitors, and I must say that it was a pretty decent offering. Now though, iiyama has got back in touch, and this time we're taking a look at their new GB3467WQSU monitors. That model number, by the way, is an absolute mouthful, so I probably won't be repeating it again in this video. And I must say, being a 32-inch ultra-wide panel, this thing is huge and amazing, and to be honest, I've pretty much fallen in love with it. Now, all I've got to do is convince iiyama to let me keep hold of it. So let's talk about some specs. The iiyama monitor here is a 34-inch 1440p gaming monitor with a max resolution of 3440 by 1440, and this works out to a 21:9 aspect ratio, so slightly wider than your typical widescreen monitor, and it also has a 1500R curve for that added immersion and peripheral vision, which I must say, when you're playing FPS games, comes in absolute clutch. It uses VA technology for its panel, so not the best in terms of color, but certainly with a refresh rate as it sports 165 Hz, and it's also compatible with FreeSync Premium for that adaptive refresh rate technology with a VRR range of 44 to 165 Hz. It comes with a stand which is pretty chunky, but after all, this is quite a heavy panel, so it does need a substantial stand for the desk. It's not quite wide enough for me to store my full-size keyboard underneath, but it is sleek enough not to look garish when on the desk. It's made from plastic on both sections, though there is a substantial piece of metal stuck in the middle of the arm, and its height, tilt, swivel, and rotate adjustable, though why anyone would want a monitor this wide at 90 degrees is mental. There are VESA 100 mounting holes on the back though if you are wanting to use this with a wall mount or monitor arm, but do be warned, it is a very heavy panel, so make sure you've got the gear to use it first. I would have liked to have seen thinner bezels to really sell the premium feel of this monitor, though they can still be considered quite skinny. There are no RGB effects here, and the monitor is a nice matte black finish, including the stand too, which looks nice. It's also pretty sturdy too on the stand and has very little wobble if nudged. Around the back you've got two HDMI 2.0 ports which will display a 3440 by 1440 resolution at 100 Hz, and two display ports for the same resolution at 165 Hz. It's also got a handy USB hub which requires a wired connection to your PC, but does have four 3.0 ports on there for USB accessories. You can also find a headphone port, even though this monitor does have speakers. Don't use them. They are absolutely terrible. Same with every monitor really, and following their other model scent, it has a joystick control for navigating the menus, which I absolutely love. Running some tests using my Datacolor Spider Elite, I started with the iiyama panel's color gamut. I can safely say that it'll do a pretty decent job with gaming, but for content creators and colorists out there, please do look elsewhere. This, after all, is technically a gaming panel, and with a score of 100% on the sRGB color gamut, your games are going to look decent. Though with scores of 83% Adobe RGB and 89% P3, you're going to want to look elsewhere. Its contrast levels, however, I am not going to sniff at all, because looking at them at 100% brightness, the panel achieved 503.2 nits of brightness with a 3200:1 contrast ratio, and at 50% brightness it achieved a 290.6 nits of brightness and a contrast ratio of 2520:1. Now this at 100% brightness can start to really touch the tip of that HDR content if you so desire, and actually turning it on this time round. I know I never really look into the HDR in gaming panels, especially at the budget end of the scale. The peak brightness certainly helped in keeping those colors nice and vivid and saturated and looking great, though I would really seriously recommend a HDR 600 panel if you are going to be wanting to play HDR games or even watch HDR media. The panel's color uniformity was pretty stellar as well, and at 50% brightness there were no real visible dark spots, though there was a bit of a hot spot in the very center of the screen. Nothing here really to complain about. At 100% brightness though, the corners got a little dark while the center still remained pretty hot at 0. And moving on to the panel's luminance uniformity, this again was pretty decent, and the only real standouts were down the right hand side, where the luminance difference at 100% overall brightness hit 10%, but again nothing major to really complain about, and it certainly didn't affect my gaming or even watching media. When dropping the brightness to 50% though, the luminance uniformity unfortunately did get worse, but again not by much at 13%. I ran a color accuracy test twice. The first was before any kind of calibration, and the second was just after my color calibration exercise, and the results I thought were actually pretty decent from the box. When running the test pre-calibration, the monitor gave me an average Delta E score of 0.68 with a high of 3.17 and a low of 0.15. Once I ran the color calibration, it didn't really improve the overall color accuracy by a huge amount, as I must say it was already decent from the box, but I did squeeze an average Delta E of 0.94 with a high of 2.34 and a low of 0.17. It's a cracking score on the color accuracy chart right there. Running a UFO ghosting test with no overdrive settings switched on, and it was pretty obvious that ghosting was present. Even on the brighter test, there was still a significant amount of ghosting, even with G-Sync turned on, and yes, it did give me a warning that this isn't a G-Sync compatible model. It didn't help either. Surprise there. However, what did was turning my overdrive setting to 4, which admittedly is pretty high for an overdrive setting on a monitor, but it did give me a decent reduction in ghosting on the UFO test, which I thought was pretty impressive. However, throwing it into a beautiful looking game, and this did result in a bit of inverse ghosting, as I found on F123, and I was forced to lower the overdrive setting to around 1 or 2, depending on the environment. This, though, I don't really think is much of a problem for me, as I am no esport gamer, so input lag isn't something I strive to get as low as possible, and even when playing something like Destiny 2 or Battlefield 2042, having my overdrive lower didn't cause me any issues either. Playing through some Grounded, the colors of the garden just absolutely popped and looked really nice and saturated, and the visuals looked super sharp. And likewise with Battlefield 2042, those colors again popped, and having that extra real estate on either side of the screen just made it feel so much more immersive, especially when piloting vehicles. Ultra-wide monitors for gaming I just think is absolutely game-changing, and when you find a decent game that can render those wider resolutions, you're going to just feel so extremely immersed into your game. Now let's talk about the price. I have found one on eBuyer for around £345 here in the UK, but other retailers have it for a similar price as well, which is an absolutely astounding value. And if you're in the market for an ultra-wide right now, I'd recommend picking one up, to be honest with you. I must say that I am absolutely impressed with this iiyama ultra-wide panel, with its decent performance, high refresh, and great color, and the number of ports on the back are more than enough for any kind of gamer. It's a superb monitor, and in terms of performance in the ultra-wide market at this size, there's not really much out there that's going to beat it, especially at this price. Thank you very much for checking out this video review of this iiyama ultra-wide panel. Again, the model number is far too long. Please shorten your model numbers down, iiyama. It will just help greatly with your marketing. If you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to keep up with our latest tech and gaming videos, and let us know in the comments down below what you think about this monitor. Is it something you would go for? Or if you're using an ultra-wide monitor, which one are you using? Let us know in the comments down below. As I say, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.